Good afternoon, everyone. And today it's my privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, who is someone I have been honored to work with on key nutrition issues impacting our children and families. And our keynote speaker today is the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. And we as pediatricians are so fortunate to have a true child advocate leading the USDA. And we're especially delighted to have him join us a few days after our release of our new policy statement on food security. In his nearly 7 years at the Department of Agriculture, Secretary Vilsack has been a leader in ensuring children and families are supported by critical nutrition assistance that promotes their lifelong health and well-being. As pediatricians, we know sound nutrition is a basic need of every child. The agency Secretary Vilsack leads plays a critical role in meeting this need every day for families across the country. Through its administration of SNAP and the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children known as WIC, school meals and summer feeding programs, and so much more. Under Secretary Vilsack's leadership, USDA has partnered with First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative to improve the health of America's children. He has also helped pass and implement the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which enabled USDA to help combat child hunger and obesity by making the most significant improvements to school meals in 30 years. And the Academy was at the helm of both of these efforts. We continue to work alongside Secretary Vilsack as he has led efforts to protect strong nutrition criteria for school meals programs. He will continue to be a critical voice as Congress currently considers reauthorizing child nutrition programs such as WIC, and is playing a key role in the 2015 revision of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, as well as the development of dietary guidelines from birth to age 2. Prior to his appointment, Secretary Vilsack served 2 terms as the governor of Iowa, in the Iowa State Senate, and as mayor of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. A native of Pittsburgh, he was born into an orphanage and adopted in 1951. After graduating from Hamilton College and Albany Law School, he practiced law in Iowa. He is the father of 2 adult sons and has 4 grandchildren. And one of the most special things about the Secretary that I have learned as we have worked together is Secretary Vilsack still remembers what it felt like to be a child. So I'm very pleased to welcome Secretary Vilsack as our keynote speaker today. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Hessek, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here today. And I was sharing with the doctor before we came on set. I can't think of a group of Americans that are more trusted and more credible than pediatricians. I can tell you that my first memory of an adult that I was encouraged to trust as a youngster was Dr. Tom Quinn, who was my pediatrician. He took care of me throughout my early childhood, shepherded me through a tough stretch where I was hospitalized for an extended period of time. So I feel it a real honor to be here today. And I will tell you that your president has really done an amazing job during the time that she has been in charge of this academy. Dr. Hessek is an incredible advocate for America's children. She has been available. She has been passionate in her advocacy for children, for better nutrition, and she has been an extraordinary, effective spokesperson for America's children in the halls of Congress, in the media, and I really treasure very much our partnership and our friendship that's been developed over the last year. And I'm here today to speak to you because we continue, as you well know, probably better than just about anybody in America, we continue to face twin challenges as it relates to our children. Far too many of our kids, even today, are living in food insecure homes, around 15.8 million of our youngsters. And as you also well know, nearly a third of our youngsters are obese or at risk of being obese. This makes up roughly half or more of America's children. And it is a crisis that's going to impact and affect these youngsters' lives. We know kids who are hungry are not going to be able to perform as well in school. We know that kids who are concerned about self-image will likewise have a difficult time achieving what their God-given talents would enable them to achieve. And we clearly know that food insecurity and hunger and obesity carry with them potential chronic diseases in early life, which may very well result in chronic diseases through their entire life. All of this challenges us as a nation. If our youngsters don't perform as well in school as they were intended to be, that will impact and affect their productivity in a very, very competitive economy, a global economy that's extraordinarily competitive. Our youngsters aren't competing against youngsters similarly situated in America. They are competing against youngsters all over the world. And the reality is that this is a tougher and tougher competition every single year, and our kids have to be at the top of their game every single year. Youngsters who carry into adulthood chronic diseases will clearly incur billions of dollars of unnecessary healthcare expense, making it more difficult for us to transition to this wellness system that we're trying to create. And it really not just impacts healthcare costs and economic security, it also is a national security issue. You might be surprised to know that retired admirals and generals feel just as passionate as pediatricians do about this particular issue. Why? Because they see over the course of time a shrinking pool of young people qualified and fit for military service, and it concerns them in terms of our country's long-range capacity to meet our defense needs. So it is a major issue that now has come to the fore. And we at USDA have taken this issue quite seriously, and we've looked at a comprehensive response and reaction to it in partnership with pediatricians and nutrition and dietitians across the United States. The first step we took was to improve our Women and Infant Children program by expanding access to the kinds of fruits and vegetables that folks might not otherwise purchase, to give a broader array of choices so that youngsters at a very early age can grow to be attracted to fruits and vegetables. We looked at our SNAP program, and first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that everyone who was eligible for SNAP was receiving the benefits of our program. When I came into office and the President instructed me to take care of America's children, 72% of eligibles were receiving the SNAP benefits that they were entitled to receive. Today, that number is closer to 85% through an aggressive marketing effort. And it isn't just about expanding access to a program, it's also about improving the program. So we made sure that we began to have a partnership with the nation's farmers markets by providing the farmers markets the electronic benefit transfer systems that would allow someone with a SNAP card not just to go to a grocery store, not just to go to a convenience store, but to be able to participate in a community experience of being part of a farmer's market. And we now have over 6,200 farmers markets that are now capable of taking the SNAP card. And we've partnered with foundations and others to encourage an increased investment in fruits and vegetables and locally produced items by doubling the bucks, if you will, that folks can spend at those farmers markets. Foundations will match SNAP dollars up to a certain amount, maybe $5 or $10 a month. A great program, and that led Congress to incorporate that effort in the Food Insecurity Initiative, which is part of our Farm Bill. Over $100 million is now going to be invested in a variety of programs around the United States to encourage SNAP families to have access to more fruits and vegetables. It wasn't just simply the SNAP program and WIC, it was also expanding summer feeding sites and sponsors. I'm proud to say that over the last several years, we've increased the number of summer meals fed to youngsters by 23 million. This is a big deal because we currently feed roughly 21 million youngsters in our free and reduced lunch program at school. But when school lets out, we only are currently reaching about 3.5 million youngsters with our summer feeding program. And you all know that in those summer months, a lot of progress can be foregone if youngsters are not given access to good nutrition. So we're constantly looking for ways in which we can expand the summer feeding program. We've looked for ways in which we can also improve the environment in schools. Creating access to school breakfast, we've seen a rather significant expansion of the youngsters who are now having breakfast in the classroom. And we know from studies that youngsters who have access to that program will do better in school and most likely will graduate at higher rates, all of which is important for them. We've also looked at the quality of the meals being served and relying on doctors and the Institute of Medicine, who came back to us and said there's too much fat, too much sodium, too much sugar in the meals that are being served in schools. There needs to be greater emphasis on whole grains and fruits and vegetables and low-fat dairy. And so we went about the process of changing the standards, upping the standards, making them better, the meals better. We've encouraged chefs to come into schools to figure out creative ways to produce food that's delicious and delectable. And what we've seen is 97% of school districts in this country and schools have embraced this effort. They are now certified as meeting our standards. In addition, we know that surveys of children, of parents, of school administrators, and the general public are supportive of these new standards. We've provided additional financial assistance and help for schools. Tragically, in some states, not all of that assistance has been used, but we continue to encourage states to embrace this new change for the benefit of our children. We've made sure that there are recipes, school equipment grants for schools that are having a difficult time being able to prepare food on site. About $185 million in school equipment grants have been authorized, and we're going to continue to do things like this to make this work. We know that there are some schools out there that are having a hard time, and we want to help. We don't want to roll back the standards. We don't want to make them less positive and less progressive. We want to help these struggling schools. So what we've done is we've partnered with the University of Mississippi and their Nutrition Center, and we've created a kind of a program, a day-and-a-half program called Team Up for Success, where we basically get a struggling school and we pair them up with a succeeding school that's similarly situated. It may be a rural school that is having a hard time because their state aid's been squeezed, they have fewer young people in their school, and they're just having a hard time. So we pair them up with a similarly situated rural school that has figured out how to do this, providing them information and input so that they can make adjustments. Maybe they can invite a chef into the school, maybe they can adopt some of the menus that have been developed, or maybe they have different procurement strategies that are effective and work. This has been enormously successful, and we started in the Deep South, and we've now expanded this for sessions throughout the United States, and we're going to continue to look for ways in which we can provide help and assistance. But now, as Dr. Hessek has indicated, the Congress has a decision to make, a decision of whether they reauthorize these nutrition programs, a decision as to whether or not they commit themselves to the progress that we've seen with slightly declining obesity rates among our youngsters, 2 million fewer kids who are food insecure than they were 6 years ago. Do we continue that forward progress, or do we respond to a vocal minority, take a step back, and basically relegate youngsters potentially to a future that's not as bright and not as hopeful? I'm here today to ask for your help. I'm here today to encourage you to help us. You have an extraordinarily powerful voice. As one of the most credible groups in the country, people listen to you. They are interested in your opinion. They're interested in your advice. And to the extent that you've adopted the new screening program, where you're basically going to be able to ask questions of families about where they are relative to food security, you're going to be able to hear the stories, the heartbreaking stories that maybe you are already hearing. And you'll be able to be a powerful advocate within the medical community. Having physicians engaged in this debate, having physicians advocate on behalf of America's children is extraordinarily powerful and very persuasive. And so to the extent that you're able to do this, to educate your fellow doctors, that's just going to be extraordinarily important to magnify the voice that you have effectively used in the last couple of years. But it's also the ability to reach out to state and local leaders. You folks know mayors. You folks have access to governors and state legislators. Again, educating yourself about the programs and encouraging states to embrace them. States that haven't used all of the money, encouraging them to use the resources. States that haven't embraced, or cities that haven't embraced summer feeding programs or backpack programs for weekends. You can be an effective advocate to making sure that folks utilize the federal programs that are available, and we'll work with you to provide you the information. You can give people information about where that summer feeding site is. You can tell them about how easy it is to apply for SNAP benefits. You can explain to them the importance of participating in the free and reduced lunch program, and you can advocate at the local level if you're dealing with school districts that have high percentages of free and reduced lunch kids to embrace the community eligibility opportunity, which will essentially eliminate the need for applications in the administration of the school lunch program and allow every kid to essentially be considered as if they were free and reduced. There are ways in which you can help us at the state and local level. And you can clearly be an effective voice here in Washington, D.C. You have access to members of Congress. You have access to senators from your respective states. You need to encourage them to stay the course, to move forward, to continue to commit to the historic legislation that was passed 5 years ago, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. Allow us to continue this good work. Allow us not to shortchange our nutrition programs. I don't know of another group outside of military admirals, generals, and military leaders that can be more effective in delivering this message, which is why I was so pleased about the opportunity to speak to you today, because I know how persuasive and how effective you can be. Look, I think everybody's got a food story. Mine certainly is no different than perhaps many. The doctor indicated that I started out life in an orphanage, and I can tell you that the one thing I know about myself, I don't know who my mother was, my birth mother. I don't know who my birth father was. I don't know their nationality or their name or anything about them. But what I do know is that I was well fed in the orphanage. I know this because there's a picture of me when I was adopted into my adopted family, and I was one plump little fellow. But you know, that impacted my life, and food has always been a challenge for me. It's always been a way in which I've dealt with the challenges of growing up in a family where my mom suffered from alcohol addiction and prescription drug addiction. It was food that was the outlet that I used, and as a result, I know what it's like to be bullied, to be made fun of because you're overweight. I know what it feels like to sit in that classroom and have people make fun of you. So my heart goes out to all of those kids today in America that are dealing with this issue. My heart goes out to the parents of these kids who are trying to figure out what's right, what's best, how do I be a good parent? And the people they turn to are you folks. They come to your offices, they sit down, and they pour their heart out, because every parent that I know is fundamentally driven by pretty much the same value, which is they want the best for their children. So I strongly encourage you to understand the power that you have and to use that power effectively on behalf of America's children. You know, in the halls of Congress and in the halls of state legislative bodies and in governor's offices, mayor's offices, I've been a mayor, I've been a state senator, I've been a governor, I've spent time here in this town. Powerful people have access. Folks who contribute a lot of money to campaigns can pick up the phone and can have access. And they often represent a business or an industry, profession. They often have something that is in their industry or their profession's best interest. It may or may not necessarily be in the interest of the country writ large, but the system allows them access to make their case. Unfortunately, America's kids don't necessarily have the ability to make large campaign contributions, and they don't have powerful lobbying groups with multi-story buildings located in Washington, D.C. and state capitals, and they can't afford the high cost of lobbyists to make their case. It's up to people like you. It's up to people who are willing to volunteer their time from their profession, from their occupation, to come to Washington, to sit in a meeting like this, to spend your time tomorrow going to the Hill and talking to your representative. You are the voice of America's children. And I can't think of a greater opportunity. I can't think of a more fulfilling responsibility I can't think of something that makes your life worthy than doing that. So I sincerely hope that you all understand the power you have. I sincerely hope you understand we are at a critical crossroads in terms of the future of this country and its children. And I sincerely hope that you use your effective, powerful voice to advance the cause of America's kids. Because if you do, I'm convinced folks will listen. And if they listen, I'm convinced that they will stay the course. And 10, 20, 30 years from now, we're going to have an even better country, a healthier country, and a more successful country. God bless you all. Thank you very much.